Good Tuesday, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Conversation Daily News. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. Because you have your news headlines coming up on this Tuesday, we have a message from my book, Words I Choose to Live By, and in today's Entertainment Spotlight, you'll be part of my conversation with Paula Young Shelton, discussing her new book, Just Like Jesse Owens. You don't want to miss that. Enjoy today's broadcast. For Conversation Daily News, I'm Cyrus Webb with your Tuesday headlines. In international news, Ukraine seeks to retake the south, tying down Russian forces. Even as Moscow's war machine crawls across Ukraine's east, trying to achieve the Kremlin's goal of securing full control over the country's industrial heartland, Ukrainian forces are scaling up attacks to reclaim territory in the Russian-occupied south. The Ukrainians have used American-supplied rocket launchers to strike bridges and military infrastructure in the south, forcing Russia to divert its forces from the Donbass in the east to counter the new threat. With the war in Ukraine now in its sixth month, the coming weeks may prove decisive. While the bulk of Russian and Ukrainian military assets are concentrated in the Donbass, the industrial region of mines and factories, both sides hope to make gains elsewhere. Ukraine has vowed to drive the Russians from the territory they have seized since the start of the invasion, including the southern region, while Moscow is pledged to hold on to the occupied areas and take more ground across the country. The Donbass consists of different provinces now controlled by Russia. The Ukrainian military analysts noted that by stepping up the attacks in the south, Kyiv has forced Russia to spread its forces. Moscow-backed local officials in Ukraine's east and south have talked about holding votes on joining Russia as early as September. Those plans hinge on Russia's ability to win full control of those areas by then. In national news, more rain and more bodies in flooded Kentucky mountain towns. Another round of rainstorms hit flooded Kentucky mountain communities on Monday as more bodies emerged from the sodden landscape, and the governor warned that high winds could bring another threat, falling trees and utility poles. The governor said the death toll rose to 35 and hundreds of people remain unaccounted for 5 days after one of the nation's poorest regions was swamped by nearly a foot of rain. The water poured down hillsides and into valleys and hollows, engulfing entire towns. Mudslides marooned some people on steep slopes. Radar indicated that up to 4 more inches of rain fell Sunday, and the National Weather Service warned that slow-moving showers and thunderstorms could provoke more flash flooding through today. In more national news, man who stormed Capitol with gun gets 7+ years in prison. A Texas man convicted of storming the U.S. Capitol with a holstered handgun, helmet, and body armor was sentenced Monday to more than 7 years in prison, the longest sentence imposed so far among hundreds of Capitol riot cases. Prosecutors said that Guy Reffitt told fellow members of the Texas Three Percenters militia group that he planned to drag House Speaker Nancy Pelosi out of the Capitol building by her ankles, with her head hitting every step on the way down, according to court filings. Reffitt's prison sentence, 7 years and 3 months, is 2 years more than the previous longest prison sentence for a Capitol riot defendant, but it's less than half the length of the 15-year prison term requested by a federal prosecutor who called Reffitt a domestic terrorist and said he wanted to physically remove and replace members of Congress. Reffitt was the first person to go on trial for the January 6, 2021 attack, in which supporters of then-President Donald Trump halted the joint session of Congress for certifying Joe Biden's 2020 electoral victory. In sports, Browns quarterback Watson suspended 6 games. NFL weighs appeal. Cleveland Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson was suspended for 6 games Monday after being accused by 24 women in Texas of sexual misconduct during massage treatments in what a disciplinary officer said was behavior more egregious than any before reviewed by the NFL. The punishment handed by the game's disciplinary officer fell well short of what the NFL had asked for, an open-ended suspension of at least a year for violating the league's personal conduct policy. Watson, who played for 4 seasons with Houston before being traded to Cleveland in March, recently settled 23 of 24 lawsuits filed by women alleging sexual harassment and assault during the treatments in 2020 and 2021. The NFL has 3 days to appeal the decision. And finally, in business news, stocks slide to start August after best month since 2020. Stocks on Wall Street gave up early gains and closed slightly lower on Monday as investors began another busy week of company earnings and economic reports. The S&P 500 gave up an early gain to end down 0.3%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average dipped 0.1%, and the Nasdaq fell 0.2%. Smaller company stocks also gave back some of their recent gains, nudging the Russell 2000 0.1% lower. The Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 46 points to close at 32,798, while the Nasdaq slid 22 points to 12,369. The Russell 2000 ended down 2 points to close at 1,883. Cyrus Webb, Conversations Daily News. It's on time for a message from my book, Words I Choose to Live By. Enjoy. Good Tuesday, everyone, and welcome to Words I Choose to Live By. Failure is not an option. There is nothing shameful about stumbling on your journey in life. The only disgrace would be in not getting up, dusting yourself off, and continuing forward. The difficulty should only strengthen your resolve that there is something greater for you right around the corner, so let's get about getting to it. Have an amazing Tuesday. Paula Young Shelton is featured in today's Entertainment Spotlight. We're here on Conversations Daily News. For Conversations Daily News, I'm Cyrus Webb with Entertainment Spotlight. Paula Young Shelton joined me on Conversations Live, the radio show, to talk about how the experiences of her father, Ambassador Andrew Young, led her to write the children's book Just Like Jesse Owens. Here's a bit of our conversation.
Michelle, thank you so much for the time. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Look, I really enjoyed this book. There's so much for us to talk about, and what I thought was so interesting and sad about it, Michelle, is that even though we're talking about the 1930s, we could really be talking about 2022. So I want to begin there. I mean, what was it like for you to think about this account from your father and how timely it is for us today?
Well, that is discouraging at times when I think about how much my father fought for voting rights and how much they sacrificed during the 60s for equality. And now, you know, we see some of these same fights coming back around again. But I think the lesson is the same, is that you have to really focus on what you want, focus on the goals, and keep working towards that.
It is a beautiful cover, Ms. Shelton, and even to see what the illustrator had to say about them being able to resonate with your father's story. What I love about it is it really does show, for one thing, forward movement, but also it shows America, it shows the world and the races of the children. So I want to talk about that part of the story for you. I mean, have you always known that you wanted to share this story with the world?
I heard this story countless times growing up, and I have always been a writer and enjoyed telling stories. And I think I got that from my dad, who would use stories to kind of teach us lessons. So it was wonderful to have this opportunity to share one of his stories in a children's book.
Cyrus Webb, Conversations Daily News. We thank you all for tuning into this edition of Conversations Daily News, but we'll have to guys on tomorrow for more news, message from my book, Words I Choose to Live By, and of course your Entertainment Spotlight. Until then, I'm your host, Cyrus Webb, saying as always, enjoy your day, enjoy your life, enjoy your world. Thank you all for choosing Conversations Daily News today, and let's go make it a great one.